1 in 3 people, actually much more than that if we're talking about young people, feel so much stress that they say most days they're completely overwhelmed. And I used to be one of those people every day of my life. And a lot of what they tell you to do about that, breathe, talk to someone about it. It wasn't even close to helping fix it. So just about everyone has lost at least some of their power to focus during the last decade, and especially during the pandemic. It can feel much harder to feel alert and peaceful inside and to get things done. If you have this, you know how demoralizing it is when you're trying and trying, but all your intentions for the day just keep getting squishy and they evaporate, and it feels bad, right? You're full of potential and you'd love to connect with good friends or find a partner or enjoy the partner you already have, and you want to be working towards things that matter, but you just keep filling up with overwhelm. Too many things are going on, too many demands on your attention, too many hardships and hurtful experiences keep coming at you, and what can happen is you just shut down. It's too much. You can't solve problems, and so they pile up. And pretty soon, you can't help but feel depressed and exhausted and hopeless that anything can change. Don't worry, though. That is the overwhelm talking. And I know a lot of you are dealing with some very hard things right now, and you're trying your best to soldier on, shake it off, like other people do. But this is what's important to know. When you get stressed, it triggers something that other people don't have. We have a stress response that's this big. A lot of people whose blogs you're reading and podcasts you're hearing, their stress response is like this. And so they're telling you, it's simple, just be kind to yourself, breathe, take a bath, talk to people about it. It'll go away. And though those are all good things, I don't think you should not do those things. But for us, for that level of stress that we're carrying, it's not enough. So there's an extra element that we need to heal that most people don't know about, and it's neurological dysregulation. And that's when your nervous system, which governs everything in your body and shapes your thoughts and your feelings, it can't quite keep up with all this input of stimuli. You hear a big noise and your nervous system goes slightly out of whack. That's dysregulation. And when it's happening, you might space out or feel numb or emotionally overreact to people, or maybe your thoughts are just flying through your mind at 90 miles a minute and you go into full flight or fight response, right? Just because you heard a noise or just because you're hurrying to get to work on time. Hurrying can be a big trigger for traumatized people, in fact. Talk about overwhelm. Trauma can predispose you to get neurologically dysregulated when anything stressful happens. Someone raises their voice at you, or you lose your job, and it's like a switch gets flipped. You can almost feel it running through you like a wave. It's dysregulation, and it causes overwhelm. Your powers of perception get very cluttered, and you can't tell if someone has harmed you or if maybe you're just overreacting. Or your emotions are going into overdrive and you say things that you don't mean, or you just go blank. Have you ever done that? When you're in this state, it's almost certain that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose track of your boundaries. You're going to lose your focus. Your physical energy drops way down right when you need energy and boundaries and focus to deal with the problem at hand. But what happens, all this hectic input right here, drains you right here. That's overwhelm. Oh, you go high with it, you go low with it. And with productivity, you get frantic, then you crash. With emotions, you blow up at people, and then you fill with despair. And then in your body, your stress response is just going and going and going and running you into the ground. And this is why a history of trauma is closely correlated with just about every health problem there is. Chronic back pain, migraines, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disorders. Your body and your thoughts and your feelings are just overwhelmed, and they can't do what they're meant to do. So I'm guessing you probably didn't know dysregulation is a thing, and you thought that you struggled because somehow you just failed to handle life like everyone else. Well, you didn't fail. We're not like everyone else. We get dysregulated easily, those of us who had childhood trauma. You can't even feel all the ways that it's happening when it does. Some things, yes, but a lot you can't feel. So no wonder there's so much going on, so much info coming in. It makes you feel overwhelmed. Now, the people who tried to help me back when I was younger were showing me what worked for them, and assuming if it didn't help me, I was being difficult or dense, or maybe I just didn't want to heal, or they thought I was crazy maybe. And what they didn't know, because nobody knew until fairly recently, that what's going on in a lot of people, especially people with past trauma, is nervous system dysregulation. Even when life is easy, we get overwhelmed, right? And then you're overwhelmed all the time, and that causes life to get harder, and you end up with a lot of problems around relationships and health and family and work and money. And then these problems start compounding the overwhelm that you already have in your nervous system, and it gets even worse. But don't worry, just knowing the signs that you're dysregulated can help you. You can say to yourself, oops, I'm feeling overwhelmed. This must be dysregulation. Just naming it can take, half of the pressure off you when it's happening. Half is a lot. Like, you can probably manage that much overwhelm, right? And you can then notice how overwhelm shows up in you, so you can work on a plan to bring that level of overwhelm down. So what are the signs that you're overwhelmed? Okay, here are some. Racing thoughts, difficulty solving problems, completing tasks, excessive anger, from snapping at people to actually raging at them, feeling a sense of urgency even when there isn't any, having ADHD type symptoms. You can't focus, you can't complete tasks, always putting out fires with a loss of ability to see the big picture. You're just running from emergency to emergency to emergency. And that leads to another sign that you're overwhelmed, which is you're chronically amped up. You're feeling the adrenaline. You're maybe even getting addicted to it. Alternatively, you can't get off the couch, right? You're just down and depressed and unmotivated. Procrastinating and avoidance are signs of overwhelm. Feeling chronically exhausted. The feeling of being defeated and hopeless, that's often part of it. Digestive distress, like both ends not going well. Headaches, chronic pain with little known origin. Getting sick easily. Attempting to escape, just like going into fantasy or running away without telling anybody where you're going, not ghosting people, that's escaping through, or you could be also escaping through unhealthy self-soothing behaviors, eating, drugs, drinking, that kind of thing. Surrendering boundaries easily, that's a really dangerous one. There's high consequences to that one. Withdrawing from social interactions, having dark thoughts and pessimism, losing your interest in things you used to enjoy, and a growing sense of shame about your overwhelmed behavior. Now, before I understood overwhelm and dysregulation and CPTSD, I was carrying a lot of shame because I couldn't understand why I was always so frantic and always seemed to have so much drama in my life. And I get it now. And I totally forgive myself, because the fact is I was carrying a lot of trauma from abuse and neglect in my childhood, and then from living my life in a dysregulated way for a lot of years. I didn't know. And the information I got from my doctor and therapist was off base. And if I hadn't figured out on my own how to heal dysregulation, I might not even be here right now. So here's my first secret for healing overwhelm. If there is not a genuine crisis demanding frantic action from you right now, your overwhelm is probably because you have trouble processing all the inputs, the noises, the bright lights, the bad fears, the worries about money, a bunch of people talking to you at the same time. I have that. I get very overwhelmed by that. These are what I call inputs, and they can add up so that they are just too much for your easily overstimulated nervous system. Now, when you're not dysregulated, you're probably pretty good at dealing with noises and stressful experiences. You see them, you feel them, and then they move downstream into the memory bucket. You remember that they happened, but you're not at the effect of these experiences. But trauma in your past can leave you prone to getting dysregulated. It happens more easily to us, and it can last longer and be harder to come back out of, which can block that downstream movement of our thoughts and experiences. You're thinking about them that day, and then they go down. The emotions and the thoughts from yesterday and the day before, they're banging around, they can't get downstream, and it just becomes too much. And this produces a feeling of overwhelm. Now again, not all overwhelm is because you're dysregulated. Life gets genuinely overwhelming sometimes. We lose our job, there's a natural disaster, a relationship ends, we find out we're seriously ill. But think about it, even in those situations, you're going to need to seek help and deal with your other responsibilities and take care of yourself and put one foot in front of the other. And all that is very hard to do when you're dysregulated and in a state of overwhelm. So it's a vicious circle. Stress makes you overwhelmed. Overwhelm keeps you from solving the problems that are causing stress. The inputs are jamming up in your nervous system, and your nervous system just gives up. It tips over into dysregulation. I do sometimes still get dysregulated, and I notice that it kind of spreads like a blob of ink in water. I can feel it running through my body, sort of like a migraine starting. It does feel like that. And you can't stop it. Like once you're aware that it's begun, you can't really stop it. But here's the good news. You can learn to re-regulate. And when you do this, you can quickly recover some of your cognitive powers and your emotional equilibrium, so you don't lash out, you don't destroy relationships while you're having a feeling. You can just be normal and have a normal amount of, we'll call it whelmed. You're just whelmed, but not overwhelmed. The silver lining here is that because dysregulation can overwhelm virtually every part of you, the solution can also begin in any part of you, anywhere, wherever you see the opportunity. You don't have to solve things in the right order. You don't have to solve all your problems at once. You don't have to love yourself first. You don't have to lose weight first, or have a job first, or feel better first. You don't even have to see a therapist first. You can start coming out of overwhelm today, and from where you are, just start feeling better. Here are some things you can try. Think about all the inputs, the stimuli that sometimes feel like too much for your senses. Is it going to parties? Is it loud noises? Is it multiple people talking at once? You don't have to avoid these triggers to control them. Just acknowledging them can help you detach a little bit when you start to feel overwhelmed. And you can remind yourself, yeah, there's a lot of noise in here in this room, and it's making me feel a bit overwhelmed. And sometimes just doing that, it's enough, noticing it, that the overwhelm begins to subside. Also, when you're overstimulated, you can take a short break from sensory input, wearing comfortable clothes. You can dim the lights or turn them out. You can turn off your phone or put it in another room. You can extend this little break into a full hour or a full day when you need a fast from your full load of inputs. You just want to give your nervous system a rest. If you're driving, try not listening to music or podcasts or talking of any kind. Just focus on driving and see if that doesn't help you stay calmer inside. When you're walking, try not using headphones or AirPods to stay stimulated. The walk is stimulation enough, and you'll find that the world lights up for you when you don't have a lot of competing stimulation coming in here. Walking is also very re-regulating, just a positive thing to do all around, especially outside. When you meditate, if you do, try just resting. You could focus on breath, you could use a mantra, but I recommend while you're trying to bring your inputs down, don't use recorded music or guided meditations where someone's talking. You don't really need to push yourself along there. Sometimes when you're overwhelmed, what you just need is rest. You can also try not speaking your agitated thoughts. Talking about trauma and things that make you angry or sad or worried can actually be triggering. Sometimes what you need more than talking about it is just to feel supported and connected. That's often what we're reaching for when we talk. And being supported and connected doesn't depend on you voicing the distress in detail. When I talk about bad things while I'm overwhelmed, I can get very negative. I can really sort of lose my bearings and just think, this world it's just so terrible, everything's so bad. Almost like I'm hypnotized. And it works against what I'm trying to do, which is to come back to present time, where I can feel myself, I see my options, and I take good actions that are in, my best interest. Now, if you haven't tried my daily practice techniques, it is a structured way to express and release the distress that you have in here, and then give your nervous system some rest and recovery and meditation. That's totally what it's for. And a lot of people with trauma find meditation really hard, right? Because our minds are so chattery. So with my techniques, you write and ask to release these fearful, resentful thoughts before you meditate. And this releases a lot of the chatter so that you get a little more peace when you do meditate. Writing helps the meditation, and then when you meditate and rest your mind, it helps you sustain your writing practice. Because if you're facing all that fear and resentment, it might feel good while you're doing it, but if you're not getting that mental rest afterwards, I've just seen it over and over again. People get overwhelmed. It's just too much is moving through you. And so you take a rest afterwards. You're healing up all those rough spots that you were releasing when you were doing the writing. Now, if you want to try the daily practice, it's linked down below in the description section and on my website at crappychildhoodfairy.com. Staying regulated and reducing overwhelm is more of a way of life than a quick fix. But there are benefits that you can start feeling today from even putting your toe in and taking some small actions. You'll start feeling better, and the little changes you make add up, and they become big changes over time. It may seem like your problems are so big that it doesn't matter what little things you do. People say that all the time. I've been in that place. But remember this, when your nervous system is regulated more of the time, there are fewer problems that can even get into your life. You'll just start being able to see the red flags in people before you let them in. And you're not putting out fires because you're not letting fires start anymore. So every day, life gets a little gentler, a little easier, there's a little more space. You're able to go even further in your healing, solving your problems, taking your next right action, growing your capacity to feel connected with other people, and then finding that power inside you to be yourself and bring to the world what only you can. It helps to learn the signs of dysregulation and quick steps that you can take to get re-regulated. I've got a free PDF that walks you through that, and you can download it right here, and I will see you very soon.